The field of Quranic studies is a very wide one in Western society today, and to introduce the breadth that is involved in Quranic studies, I have Dr. Holger Zellentin. Holger, the Qur'an, a single book, the study of the Qur'an takes many forms. Can you try and take us through the breadth of Quranic studies?
I will do my best, and I think the best way to give a very brief lay of the land is by using the three categories that a colleague of mine in Stanford, Behnam Siddiqui, has put forward. He argues, well, there's basically within the Western schools three approaches to the Quran. The first being traditionalist, the second being revisionist, the third being neo-traditionalists. Now, what he means by that is that the traditional study of the Quran approaches the Quran through Muslim tradition, through the traditions attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, through the traditional way in which the individual surahs are related to the life of Muhammad, and to other early Muslim traditions. Now, the key factor here is that the Quran is attributed exactly word by word to the Prophet and to specific moments in his life. And that is the traditional school, and for the most part, Western, even critical scholars have followed that broadly. They've constructed the Quran as being partially given in Mecca, partially in Medina, and have even found a way to give an internal sequence of the surahs. And that is what is called here traditionalist. Now, the revisionists were a school that basically was brought into being by this work of Wansbrough, a British scholar, who said, well, if you look at the Quran, we cannot really use the Muslim sources. We have to discard any of the Muslim evidence, and we have to maybe look at its origins, say, hundreds of years later in Mesopotamia. A quite radical move. He was a very smart scholar, and he has lots of interesting insights, but of course he went a bit too far, as people tend to do. And this revisionism, meaning to radically take the traditional Muslim narrative out of Quranic studies, has probably found its peak in the famous book by Patricia Crone and Michael Cook, called Hagerism, which also tried to discard the traditional evidence and to reframe the Quran as a much later document. That is so revisionism in its purest. Of course, any Western scholar who does not accept the traditional narrative is somehow revisionist, because one revises what is being put forth. The third category, therefore, is very interesting. It is the neo-traditionalists, which would say, well, you know, the people like Wansbrough and Crone had good reasons to go too far, but they went way too far. And critical historical study nowadays would actually move quite a bit along the lines of the traditional Muslim narrative, not to say that it's true word by word, but to say, well, that the broad concepts of a sequence of revelation, of a sequence of also iteration and redaction, then would be historically verifiable, which makes them neo-traditionalist. They go back, not all the way, but part way to the way that the Quran has always been understood. So those are the three broad schools, traditionalists, revisionists, and neo-traditionalists, according to this three-partite structure. I think it's even a bit more complex, because there would be people somewhere in between, say neo-traditionalism and revisionism. But there is actually, I think, a very rich discussion now going on in Quranic studies that can be mapped quite nicely onto this paradigm. And the three schools that probably are the most active today are one, a school around the project of the Corpus Quranicum in Berlin, initiated by Professor Angelika Neuwirth and founded with the Brandenburgische Akademie der Wissenschaften. This is a massive online project that collects many of the Quranic manuscripts we have. It collects sources that are pertinent to specific surahs. It gives you a transcription, a translation. It's a multi-year undertaking that does two things. One, it shows the Quran as in all its complexity, but it also comes from an approach that sees the Quran as given in sequences, as being brought forth as along the traditional lines of first a Meccan and then a Medinan phase, and which it sees very critically, but still as basically accurate. That's the people in Berlin. Of course, many more are part of that, but it's based in Berlin. Now, a second group of scholars that I am personally affiliated with is located around the work of Gabriel Said Reynolds at the University of Nottingham, who has current support from the Mellon Foundation and runs a Quran seminar. And here we also come together and discuss individual surahs, but more with an emphasis on the Quran as a text as a whole, the way we have it. Many people, not all, by no means all, but many people affiliated with this project are a bit more reluctant to say we can see those layers of the Quran, we can see the sequence. Probably most of us would say, well, obviously it is a text, it has many stages to it, but we're not yet sure enough how to lay them out. And me personally, coming from the background of Jewish studies, I'm a bit wary about, any precise attribution of a sequence. I'm saying, okay, this all makes sense, but maybe we're holding the telescope the wrong way around. So this school sees the Quran as a whole and sees sequence, but is a bit uncertain about it. And so I would say, whereas you could basically put the Corpus Quranicum in Berlin within the Neo-traditionalists. The project of Reynolds, I think you can place somewhere in between Neo-traditional and Revisionist. There's a third school that has received lots of attention, also located in Germany, the University of Saarbrücken. It's called the Inara group, the Enlightenment group. Somebody needs to be enlightened in their view, and don't want to be too critical about them. There's wonderful scholars affiliated also with that group, but they are most extreme in their revisionist approach, and they try to take the Quran really out of its context. They even try to take Muhammad out of the Quran, and they probably are most clearly represented by the work of Christoph Luxemburg, a scholar who wants to radically rephrase the Quran and to make it a document that is entirely dependent on previous sources. So this is probably the most extreme of the revisionist school.
Thank you, Holger, for giving us that wonderful panorama of where Quranic studies is at in the West today and the different approaches. For myself, as someone who's not a Quranic scholar, what I am most fascinated to learn from you is that all of these investigations are not being carried out by lone individuals, but they're being carried out by teams of scholars working in great collaborative projects. And, well, in Christian studies, we've seen that in things like the Jesus Seminar, but it's still a way of working that so few of us are actually involved in. So thank you, number one, for giving us the overview of Quranic studies, and thank you for scholars in other areas of theology and religious studies for maybe calling to mind that we too should be working in teams.
Absolutely. Thank you.